Greetings, everybody. This is Leviathan here, and today we've got a T16 speed farm version of the Gears of Dreadlands set for you. I'm back, bringing you some more speed. I got rid of all my hair and everything so we could go super fast. So right now you're looking at a gameplay video that I pre-recorded for this, just so I could talk while it's going. And you'll see right at the beginning there I replicated, or I showed that we're replicating being only Paragon 800 for this particular gameplay session. Because obviously if I had a ton of Paragon, every T16 build would, be fine with a ton of power. But this is just going to showcase how ridiculously powerful you'll be right from the get-go as a early Gears of Dreadlands Demon Hunter. Once you get all the required items together and everything like that, you'll be able to blast through. There's tons of movement speed in the build, plenty of damage, the ability to collect gold, all of the orbs from the elites, everything nice and efficiently. So this build's going to be great for T16. I think you can still successfully run multi-shot if you want to, and I think there are actually some advantages to multi-shot over this, but at least for the purposes here, you have just tons of resource, tons of movement speed through some of the skills and things. We're going to talk about everything in just a moment, but I wanted to at least start out with some gameplay so you could see it in action, see it in a pretty decent greater rift, or a regular rift. And then in the video description, there's going to be links to everything, a written guide, a D3 planner, all that good stuff. We'll be using the D3 planner to talk about all the gear and the skills, everything that you've come to know and love from the Leviathan build guides here. So this one's just about to wrap up here. I'll let you see the Rift Guardian kill, and then we'll go ahead and switch on over to talking about the build. And it's that easy. Look at that. Took him down nice and quickly. The build just does damage, man. It's so good. It's so good. We're lucky as Demon Hunters to now have this. Alright. So off we go. This is the Gears of Dreadlands T16 setup. So for those of you that don't know what Gears of Dreadlands is, I'll quickly go over it. I did cover it in my solo push video that I put out yesterday or earlier today, depending on when you're seeing this. So you can definitely go and check that. But basically the Gears of Dreadlands set, it all focuses around primary skills like Hungering Arrow, Bolas, etc. and Strafe. There's a 2-piece set bonus that gives you this momentum mechanic where you can stack that up. You get 4 seconds of it for shooting off a primary skill, and it can stack up to 20 seconds, so it's like a 200% bonus from damage. And let me just close the video here. It's going to make some noise in the background. It's going to give you 200% bonus damage on that 2-piece, and then on the 4-piece, when you're strafing and you're actually near enemies, you'll be able to cast your last used primary skill for free from your strafes. So that'll be your Hungering Arrow if that was the last thing you shot. Get a bunch of those out. This also gives you a damage reduction, and you get the movement speed like I was mentioning. So a juicy 160% movement speed at max. And last but not least, the 6-piece set just boosts your damage for those primary skills. So as mentioned, this is a Hungering Arrow build. We're primarily going for that for our damage output. I actually tried a bunch of different runes here because Hungering Arrow has Devouring Arrow, which is kind of the most popular for solo push. It's also really good in T16. I did try Shatter Shot. I know some people like Spray of Teeth as well. They're all basically pretty effective, but I think Devouring Arrow just seems to perform the best. So if you want some consistency between your T16 and your regular GR speed farming and your solo pushing for GRs, you might as well just keep it all in the family. Just stay Devouring Arrow the whole way through. But if you want some different elements and things like that to try for, then there's Physical on Spray of Teeth and Lightning on Shatter Shot. But we're going with Devouring Arrow, which makes it a cold build. So stack that cold on your gear. And then that is what we have for Hungering Arrows. Our first skill we'll talk about there. Of course, you have to include Strafe, because that is how you'll deliver the free Hungering Arrows that'll get shot at with that 4-piece, and they do a lot of damage for you. We're using the Drifting Shadow rune, especially here, because it gives you your max movement speed. When you're normally strafing without this rune, you're at a reduction of your base movement speed, 75% of it instead of 100%. So this just brings you back up to normal, and then you get all the juicy movement speed that you're going to stack on top of that. So definitely want to go with that. For the other skills, there is some variation and choices you can make here. I think this is definitely a must include. Smoke Screen with Displacement as the rune gives you a 100% movement speed while you're invisible. It's a very short skill, right? It's just 1 second, but for that 1 second you are speeding, so it'll help you get through some really like sort of desolate areas where there's not a lot of enemies, or if you have to backtrack a little bit to go pick up a legendary or something like that, you can just pop this and it's a beautiful, you will definitely notice the steroid of movement speed that you get from it. And you can use it quite a bit, even though it costs some decent discipline, because we're including preparation, focus, mind, where this just will restore discipline to you over the course of time. So 15 seconds, you'll get 45 discipline back over that time. And it works great. It's a solid cooldown, but again, we have cooldown reduction in the build because we need it for 100% uptime on Vengeance. So you'll have access to this, and you basically should not run out of discipline if you use everything correctly and properly, plus some other things we've included as well. Last but not least, well, 2 more skills. Companion, here we have Wolf. Early in the season, and when you're just getting the gear and the setup together, you'll probably want Wolf Companion for more damage, just to make sure you can like really rip down those elites. But as you get stronger, as you get more Paragon, your gear gets better, you augment all that good stuff, it definitely won't need Wolf Companion. So you could go with like the Ferrets, get more gold fine to keep those greater rifts empowered, or you can just drop this skill altogether and pick up another movement skill like Shadow Power, which has a rune on it that can give you some additional movement speed. It's also going to cost you some discipline, so you're going to really start to tax those discipline needs, but just another way to get more in there. This is definitely a flex slot as your season goes on. Last but not least, for real this time, Vengeance, and we're going with Seethe. We don't need defense as much because we're going to take care of that with the Boon of the Hoarder, Avarice Band, and Gold Wrap combination. That's how we're going to get all our defense. But here, we just go with Seethe because it'll help alleviate the needs of Hatred. One of the things that this build can run into is that when you're strafing, you're going to be killing things and you're not going to have a lot of opportunity to get Hatred back. And so you could run out of Hatred, and you don't want to stand there and spend a lot of time just like stacking up more Hatred to keep going. So Seethe should help offset a bit of that. We also have some resource cost reduction rolls on gear to help with that as well. But we also get it back in other ways too, like some of the passives that we're about to talk about. This is just to help you kind of keep moving through the rifts nice and smoothly. The passives, more movement speed, tactical advantage. So the like extra of hitting that smoke screen insane button is that it'll activate tactical advantage as well, so you get even more movement speed for a few seconds from that. It's just so much movement speed, man. You're gonna be zooming. You got the zoomies. Blood Vengeance is great here because, like I mentioned, with Avarice Band in the build, which we'll talk about in just a moment, you're gonna have a pretty big pickup radius, which means you don't even have to go out of your way to pick up the health globes that'll just randomly drop off of enemies. And so you can turn those into resources for you. They'll give you back Hatred, and they'll give you discipline as well. So they're just really good to keep you topped off when you're starting to run low on either of those resources. And you'll get a lot of health globes, but you just won't even notice them because you're going to sweep them up as you move along with your strafe machine. Next, Ambush is always a great one when you're pretty close to one-shotting enemies because it just gives you big damage when the enemies are above this 75% health threshold. And so the ideal idea is that it's just going to make for a big hit for that first hit and likely take those enemies down in 1 to 2 shots or so. So it really propels your damage. And then this last slot is also a flex slot as well for hardcore, or if you just don't like dying in general. And that can happen if you haven't gotten gold in a while, so your gold rep bonus falls off, or if you're just starting a rift out and an enemy just happens to throw something at you, then you could die. So I would maybe recommend awareness, especially for hardcore. But if you feel like you're not worried about death at all, pick up Hot Pursuit, because it's going to give you more movement speed, and that is the name of the game. Once you have enough damage in the build, it's just all about how much more movement speed can you get into the build to keep zooming along. There's other passives you can take here too, so again, this is a flex slot. You can play around with some other ones that you might want, but I would say those are your 2 best options, either Hot Pursuit or Awareness in this slot. Next, let's go ahead and talk about the cube, Kanai's cube. So we got Echoing Fury in here. I love Echoing Fury in speed builds. This power, it just reads very poorly because it doesn't tell you what Frenzy actually does. But basically, every time you kill an enemy, you get 1 stack of this Frenzy mechanic, and each stack is worth 15% attack speed and 5% movement speed. So basically here we get movement speed again, and you can have up to a maximum of 5 stacks of frenzy. So once you've killed 5 enemies, you're maxed out on your Echoing Fury legendary power, and now you're zooming along, more attack speed, things like that. So if you need to, and you will have to weave out, you know, those Hungering Arrows manually cast to keep those momentum stacks coming back in, and that'll just help you do that even faster, and just lots of fast movement, everything. It fits perfectly into speed builds. So Echoing Fury there. And I will mention though that this can also be a slot that you leverage for other things. You might try other powers. Fortress Ballista could be one of those powers as well, because it gives you a shield. And we are going to use Skort's Necklace in this build, but say you didn't want to use the Molten Wildebeest Gizzard to give you your shield to help you keep your Skort's Necklace bonus up so that your shield's getting attacked, not your life. Then you could do a Fortress Ballista in the cube, and then pick up another gem like a Bane of the Trapped or something. That's particularly good if you need more damage early on, but I feel like this setup should work just fine. Next up is Hunter's Wrath. This is a standard build, or standard legendary power for this build. Any primary skill usage, you're going to want this belt. You can definitely swap between whichever one you have the best of. The reason I put the Hunter's Wrath in the cube is because it does have a range on the power. So if you put it in the cube, you get the maximum automatically. So you get that 30% faster attacks and 200% increased damage. But I mean, if you have a great one, you can always wear it in cube or gold wrap if you can't find a good gold wrap or something like that. And then we have an Avarice Band here. This is what I've been mentioning all along. It's whenever you pick up gold, it'll increase your pickup radius for 10 seconds. And you can keep refreshing that as you pick up more gold, and it goes up to 30 times. So it can give you 30 yards of pickup radius, which is amazing. Absolutely amazing. And again, we combine that with the fact that we have a Boon of the Hoarder. And when that's at max rank, every enemy you killed will drop gold. So you can start to see the synergy here, the combination. And then we can actually use that bridge to talk about the gear. So all 6 pieces of the set, I can hover over the pieces to show you what affixes I've decided to go with here. Pretty close to some of the ones that we used in the solo push build. So again, that'll be linked in the video description. You can check that out for more discussion on Gears of Dreadlands and all that. But basically it's a lot of the same, except in T16 we don't really care about area damage. So I changed any place that we had area damage to other roles. Like here we're getting a resource cost reduction roll, but it's not super important. It's just kind of a nice to have. Could always go with vitality instead or something like that. And then here we had an area damage roll before, but now we're picking up a cooldown reduction roll. And of course, I didn't mention it previously, but if you have Vengeance, then you want to have 100% uptime on it. And the way to achieve that is to make sure that you're going to use a Dawn. We're equipping it in this case. You want to definitely get to 65%, which is the max on that legendary power, but you can get by with like a 64, 63. Below that, you're really starting to get into rough territory because you're going to need more rolls of cooldown on gear and such to make up for that 100% uptime. But assuming you have a 65%, then you need 37% cooldown reduction on your sheet. You can see here we have 38.68, and we get that from a few sources. You will have Paragon cooldown. You want to max that out. You have a Flawless Royal Diamond in the helm to give you a cooldown as well. And you're going to need on a few pieces. So here I put it on the shoulders, the gloves, and the quiver. And that's the 3 slots that you would need. You need at least 3 affixes that are close to max. 7 to 8% will get it done. So that's something to keep in mind. And the quiver, of course, super big for Hungering Arrow. It gives you the guaranteed pierce and a nice fat multiplier to the Hungering Arrow damage. And you can see itemized, just pretty standard for quivers. Actually be a pretty hard quiver to get in terms of like maxing it out and all those good affixes, but something close to this will be great. Nemesis Bracer, so whenever you come across a pylon or a shrine, gives you an elite. It just makes your your rifts that much faster and more consistent because it's just free elites coming out of those fixtures there. We talked about the gold wrap. It gives you defense, so this is where you get all your defense from with gold. Pick up the gold, it converts it to armor. And here we can pick up a Hungering Arrow roll for damage as well. And then Skort's Necklace, I'd mentioned it sort of in passing, but this is how we're itemizing it. It's pretty standard for amulets, and this is such a big amount of damage. I think it's part of what can really help us get to that T16 level of destroying stuff very quickly. So I would say it's pretty must include, but some people don't like playing with it. So if you did want to switch away from it, you could go with maybe a Flavor of Time or something, or an S of Johann, just things that might be effective but aren't that great for T16. Scorched Necklace is really where it's at, so it is my recommendation. And then we did talk about Dawn. Again, this is what helps propel us into that 100% Vengeance, 100% uptime on it. Pretty standard in terms of the rolls here. Like I mentioned before, you don't need area damage as much or really at all, so I switched that here to resource cost reduction. And again, that's just to help out with when you're strafing all the time, not having it tax your hatred so much. Makes life a little easier for you, but it's not necessary. You could definitely go for some other rolls as well. It's just kind of a min-max thing. And then for the jewelry, the rings, we have Stone of Jordan, which is just a really nice one on when you're not going like Focus and Restraint and stuff like that. So you can pick up Stone of Jordan here. And Focus and Restraint, by the way, is a perfectly valid option too. Probably should mention that. And that'll give you a lot of punching power because it's a big multiplier to damage as well. But this version is going to be sort of like when you're really starting to min-max and you want even more movement speed, because that is always the name of the game. This setup just allows us to use a Retchel's Ring, which is the next item we're about to talk about. So in this case, we have Stone of Jordan, cold damage, crit damage, damage against elites. Actually works out really nicely for purposes of just pretty much hunting down the elites and killing them. And we'll talk about the legendary gems in just a moment. And then here on the Retchel's Ring, I noticed I didn't put a socket in here yet, so I can actually do that here on the fly. You guys can see how we use D3 Planner. And then I'll go with a Simplicity Strength. That is the third gem. And we'll just put it at rank 100. There you go, on the fly. So on this Retchel's, I decided to do average damage and then critical hit damage, critical hit chance. So it's just like a big damage ring. It's the ideal stats. And the reason that we're wearing this and not cubing it, because you could always just cube, instead of Avarice Band, you could cube Retchel's and get the power. But you need a chance to fear. And the ring actually gives you one, as you can see on the secondary. And then the actual power that we're benefiting from here is that at max, you get 60% increased movement speed for 4 seconds after you've feared an enemy. And the way that it works is that most skills, every skill has some sort of proc coefficient, and you're going to get a chance to proc things that your build can do or that your skills can do. And for instance, chance to fear, which is on the secondary here, there's going to be a chance for that to happen. So whenever it does go off, you'll notice just a big increase to your movement speed. And it does happen quite a bit, so it's definitely a nice include here. And like I had mentioned before though, if you feel like you need more punching power, definitely feel free to pick up Focus Restraint, but this is what you should aim towards basically. Legendary gems, just to make sure we fully cover it. Simplicity Strength, this is a must include in primary skill builds, which this is with Hungering Arrow. So you're going to use that to get more damage, and there's some healing in there, but you shouldn't need to worry about healing, again, with the crazy defense you'll have from Gold Wrap. Boon of the Hoarder, there's actually a movement speed bonus here too. Come on, give me the movement speed. And then like I mentioned, at max rank, you get a 100% chance when you kill an enemy for it to drop gold, so it keeps that cycle going of drop gold, pick it up, get a bigger pickup radius, pick up more gold, and also convert all that gold to armor with Gold Wrap. And then last but not least, Molten Wildebeest Gizzard. This is again to protect our life, because the way that Scorched Necklace works is if you get attacked to your life, if you actually lose any life, then you lose the Scorched bonus. But if you have a shield around your life and the shield gets attacked, then you actually keep your Scorched bonus. And there's a synergy in that most attacks now, with our crazy amount of defense coming from Gold Wrap, are going to be reduced to like 1 damage, 2 damage, 3 damage. Like they're going to do very little damage to you, which means they shouldn't penetrate your shield. And then the Molten Wildebeest shield is just going to make it so you have 100% uptime on squirts, so you're doing max damage. And the idea, again, like I mentioned, if you do need more punching power, you want to change some things around, maybe you don't like Echoing Fury, you can sub that out for the Fortress Ballista, and if you do, then you get a shield from that power, so then you can sub out Molten Wildebeest and put in like Bane of the Trap. That'd probably be the next best option. I don't like Taeguk for this because you do have to stop to pick up items, and then you're going to likely run your Taeguk stacks down. And you get them back relatively quickly, but I like just immediate damage, so I would go with Bane of the Trap there. And then for regular gems, Emeralds in the main stuff here, and Diamond here, Emerald in weapon. And that is it, guys. I hopefully didn't take too long with that one. Wanted to sort of try to speed through it. But yeah, again, all resources, things that you can use will be in the video description. Any updates that we make to this, we'll update the D3 planner, or I'll update the written guide on Diablo fans. Should be a fun build. Definitely something to use in T16. You can make bounties. You can do bounties with it as well too. So definitely have a blast. You probably want to change it up a little for bounties if you're going to be killing bosses, because there's no gold in bosses, so it could get a little sketchy defense-wise. But maybe we'll cover that in another build video in the future. Hop into the comments though. Let me know if this build worked for you, anything that you want to discuss about it, or things that you might change or would like to do. Always open to more ideas and hearing stuff, and it helps other people out when they look at the video too. And then make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss any other videos in the future, because there will be more. There's always more. But thank you for watching this one, and I will catch you in the next one. Adios for now.